Hey, this is Steven from Steven's Classic Garage, and today I'm going to give you guys a little bit of update on what's going to be going on the channel uh, um, in the coming future, because I am kind of in between content here. A lot of the stuff is just being rehashed, so I didn't want to, keep posting kind of the same thing over and over and over again. So let's start off with the Mustang restoration. So I figured out the paint. So I'm going forward. I painted the trunk lid. It's not exactly my best paint job, but I'm just going to move forward. I could always repaint it again. That's not an issue because I've repainted it multiple times at this point. So that I'm not really too worried about that. So basically what I'm doing on that is it's been painted and now it is sitting. Basically what I'm going to do with that is once a week I plan on painting a panel, as long as the panel's not too messed up and hasn't gotten damaged by just sitting outside, somebody bumping into it or whatever. And obviously I'm going to check it, guide code everything, make sure everything's still straight. So what I'm going to be doing is over these next couple weeks, each week I'm going to do a panel on the Mustang. I've completed the trunk lid for now and probably for the near future for a while. I mean, I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, so basically what happened to it was my seal on my paint gun is there's ending up being so much paint buildup on the cap of the lid for the paint gun that when I filled it full of clear, the new Euro Classic clear to spray on the trunk lid, it actually didn't seal right and it actually dripped onto the hood. I mean, on the trunk lid, which that's fine because when it's clear, you could just sand it off. When you cut and buff it, you can just sand it flat. So it's better to have more clear than not enough, right? So that's not that big of an issue. But another thing was when I was shooting the base went down really, really well, except for I had two large flies land on it. And so now there's these two black spots. What I did is I used my fingernail and I broke down the fly so that it didn't protrude onto the clear, so that when I cut it, it wouldn't create a void where where acetone or whatever chemical can get in there and then leach in and kind of dissolve the lacquer underneath and basically destroy the paint job. So there's two spots with that. Unfortunately, one of the flies was really, really big, so it's a really big black spot on there during the base coat. So, I do need to figure out how to deal with that because that's going to happen in the garage. So I do need to figure out how I'm going to cover or how I'm going to deal with it when it is going to happen. So, could I put could I get a little paintbrush and paint in that area, and will it look okay with the metallic, and will it damage the rest of the area? Am I going to sacrifice a whole entire, that whole entire paint job right there for the base coat if I do that? Is it going to become too thick so that now it's built up and it's not going to let me, when I color sand it, I'm going to sand down into the color, and then now the whole paint job is compromised. Because if there's any holes where there's not clear, I'm going to have an issue where chemicals or whatever could leach into there, or even the sun could leach into there, and it'll destroy the paint job from the inside out, right? The clear is there to protect the material and the paint job, and if there is no clear in one spot, stuff will go through and basically debond the base coat, and once you debond the base coat, the clear coat's going to go with it. So, yeah, so I need to figure out a way to fix that on the fly before I paint it again. But other than that, so now kind of how my mentor says it is, his name is Tony. He's the guy that kind of got me into cars. He says, it's a 40 car, for example, like 40 feet away, 40 miles an hour, right? So this paint job, this quality on this trunk lid, I'm gonna say is about I'm gonna say it's like it's a 7 to 8 foot zero. So 0 miles an hour, 7 to 8 feet away. after I cut and buff, of course. Right now there's massive amounts of orange peel, which I've always had on this paint job. So if you're 6 to 8 feet away, and even if the car's not moving, you're not going to notice, but once you get closer, you'll see that little black spot. And luckily it's on the trunk lid, so it's kind of angled at a point where it's going to be very hard to see until you get on top of it. So we'll see in the future. Maybe I'll take it off later and respray it, but I'm kind of over it at this point. Okay, so this coming week, so basically that's been sitting in the garage, so my plan is after I paint it on the weekend, have it sit in the garage for the whole week until the weekend, and then it goes outside in direct sunlight. So it has a week to set up, and I could tell that this one, when I sprayed it, I weighed everything. The mix I did to weight, so I actually used a scale, and I think I did 300 grams the first time. So I did 300 for the mix. I did up to 5 on the paint canister on the mixer, and then obviously I tared out the scale and with the cup on there, and then I filled it up to 5, and 5 appears to be about 300 grams. And then I filled it with whatever 1/4 of that is, which is like 75 or something. 75 grams and some change, because it was actually 303 grams. So filled it in with that, mixed it up, and you could tell that it's curing because over the days the texture changes. And that's when you could tell that it's set up. So it's actually finished painting it on Monday this week, so it's been in there since Monday, and today is 3 o'clock Friday, 3 p.m. Friday. So it's going out of the garage tomorrow morning, and then I'm going to start setting up some spaces to put it in the backyard. And we have this new open space now that I could line them up against the back wall, and so they will be there taking up the sun and kind of setting up even further. Now the idea is that that's going to sit outside until the rest of the panels are done. So we have the hood, which is this week. We have a fender, another fender, the outside of a door, the outside of the other door, the inside of one door, the inside of the other door, and then the rest of the car, which might be multiple weeks with that. So that's at least almost 10 weeks, pretty much. So it'll be outside for almost 10 weeks, and then it will go onto the car, and then everything will be placed onto the car, and then I'll get it back street legal, put all the glass in it, and then start going from there one at a time. I'll probably buy carpet first, because when I put everything back in, might as well have carpet in there, because then you got to take everything back out. So put carpet in, put gauges in, so I have a speedometer, and then start getting ready to drive it so that I could work on the Rabbit. So that's about, I'm going to say 10 weeks or so until I start putting everything back together and starting getting ready for it to be street legal. So I'd say probably another month past that. So another 4 weeks and it'll probably be on the street. So that's 14 weeks divided by 4.4 weeks and a month. So that's about 3 months or so from now. So that will be January. And I need to do this quickly because it's starting to get colder and colder and colder as time goes on. Obviously, we're in a heat wave here in California, but it's going to start to get colder and colder. So I need to get this going. I do have medium reducer, but I need to get this going. And then a couple other things with paint. I want to paint my neighbor's truck, Tony, who's my mentor, who kind of got me into cars. I want to paint his truck, so we might even talk about that. And then my buddy Andrew up the street, I wanted to do some spotlights on some of his Rabbits, on some of his cars. And then also I would like to do a spotlight on Tony's car. Tony's two cars, his 65 Chevy truck and his 64 Cutlass. Is it 60? No, 64 Chevy truck and 65 Cutlass Grand Sport. I would like to do a little spotlight on those. Okay, so that's basically what's going on with the Mustang. And then, also the front end. I have to do the whole front end, but that's not really required to put the car back together. Right? I mean, for the headlights and stuff it is, but, to find somebody, I just need to have the top painted of the car so I can find somebody to start putting the glass back in. Also, that same neighbor I was talking about, Andrew, he works for a Safe Light Auto Glass, so he does have some of the equipment to help put that thing back in. Okay, so yeah, so that's basically it for the Mustang. Stay tuned for that. I didn't want to talk again about the trunk. I was just gonna say here my how I'm going forward. So again, place it outside when everything is done. Put it on. Then when I get to that point, it will be cut and buff every week. I'll cut and buff a panel until the point is done. So it'll have each panel will have the same time after cutting and buffing, pretty much. So every panel will have at least 12 weeks or so of curing in the sun. So that's about 3 months. That's a little bit under 3 months before a cut and buff. I think that's plenty long enough. Indirect sunlight. And then maybe I might even wait after that to where I get it street legal, and then I might buff it all in one day or something. Or, well, not buff it all in one day and then do this buffing. But the reason why is I want to get it back on the street so I could drive it, license it, insure it, license it, get the license up to date, registration I mean. And so that way I could start doing some drivetrain mods on the Rabbit. And so that way I could kind of swap in and out of driving the Rabbit or driving the Mustang. So I could take the Rabbit down for a little while to fix it up. So after I get the Mustang street legal, we're going to take care of all the mechanical issues. And once all the mechanical issues are done, I drive it a couple times and it's reliable, then I could take the Rabbit offline and do some mods to it. Okay, so now speaking about the Rabbit. So here are a couple of things that I have planned for the Rabbit. Number one, this last weekend, Sunday, I ordered from a website called GoKrout. I ordered a bunch of strain reliefs. Now, this is all to what I call the Road to Turbo, which was originally cooling and brakes, but now I'm adding support. I can't remember if I added support before, because when this car goes up over speed bumps, it really does, or up driveways, you could hear it creak. So there's a couple things that I wanted to work on there. So basically, I need a couple more strain reliefs, or stress bars, or however you want to call them. So there's one underneath the hood, which I already have, and then there's one that goes by the transmission. So basically it goes across the control arms there. Now that is down here. I bought that one. That's $170. This is probably the best deal. This is the closest one, which is the Eurosport, but they want $189. And this one is $150. So quite a bit lower cost than the Eurosport. So $150, right? So this is $190. So it's like $40 cheaper. So I would suggest you get it from here, from GoKrout, and then as you can see, it goes between the two suspension, the two control arm bolts, pretty much. And it has this cross brace. It goes this way and then an X cross brace. So it's going to strengthen all that up. Because again, remember, this car has only got like 1,800 pound curb weight, and it's got a really, really thin sheet metal. Then I bought the front chassis cross member brace. And so if you look here, they have you could see how thin the sheet metal that they used on this car. So this is very thin. And there are some videos that they show of cars where they've cracked, the frame is cracked. And like this, or even up where the steering is, because the steering puts a lot of stress on the car because the wheel doesn't want to move. And so if you take a turn really hard or whatever, it puts a lot of stress on the frame. And because my car is pretty slammed, it also puts a lot of stress. Recently, I went over a bump going to the gym. They undercut the street out, and I wasn't aware. I went over one side, and I didn't have enough time to slow down before the next side, and I hit it. It was like hitting a brick wall, and this thing was probably like maybe this little bump was like maybe 2 inches tall, 2 inches deep, or maybe even 3 inches deep. It was pretty deep. It's a pretty deep bump, and it's a square bump. It just went straight up, and it hit really hard. So that's another thing. Maybe change suspension a little bit over time. But you can see here. So basically, this goes down there, and it kind of braces the radiator support here. So it gives a little bit more stress to the frame, so that the frame lasts longer than it normally does. So here you can see Volkswagen Rabbit, GTI, whatever, Golf 1975 to 84. So this is bolted on, and I just bought the scratch and dent price, $120, which is pretty good deal compared to $150. So you're gonna save $30 for it to have a scratch and a dent on it. I really don't care. So I would have done that if they had this here. So yeah, so that's what I got. I got this guy and this guy. So these two are going to be installed. I don't know if I'm going to get it this weekend, and I'll talk a little bit about what I'm going to do this weekend. So this is kind of their competitor, and they do not have the front brace here on the Eurosport, as far as I know. So get it from GoKraut, get both of them. I think I paid like $320, I think, for the whole thing. It was $50 to ship both, so it's about $25 a piece. So really, really good deal. I would suggest doing it. So next you want to do is next thing I plan on doing this week is I bought some. Let me show you guys. I did not put it on here. Oh man. Oh, anyways, it wants me to reset my password. I'm not going to do that right now. So basically what I plan on doing this weekend is I have a so I wanted to get this stress bar, and I've been looking at the stress bar, and really it's just a straight bar with a removable end on it, pretty much. So I was like, hey, I could make this, and if I made this, I promised myself that I could buy these both. That if I made this, okay, so basically what that is that piece goes across the struts in the back. So again, up in the front, I have one here. I got one in the front across the radiator support, one in the back across the suspension, one on top for the strut towers, and then this one's on the back across the strut towers. So I have a drawing around here. I think it's in the other room, but I did a drawing for the dimensions in the back trunk to actually make one of these. And I don't know if you guys could tell, but basically it's a glorified bar with two exhaust clamps on there. And you'll see here. It's just basically a glorified exhaust clamp, right? So there's two exhaust clamps on there. And it turns out that they are 2.5 inch. Wait, can you get these? Yeah, October 2nd to 7th. So I ordered two on Amazon that are really, really nice. They're $4 a piece. They're going to be here Saturday. I don't know if that's going to give me enough time to buy the steel for it, but we'll see. I'll probably just buy the steel. I'll probably use some of the images because I do have some straight down images. So, and I know what this diameter is 2.5 inches. So when I use this diameter, I could draw it up and buy the right size, and I know the length from one side to the other. So I could buy that and be able to get the right size. So I'm going to try to build this weekend. Pretty simple. 2 cuts, 2 welds, and then paint it. And then I'll probably just primer it for right now. I could take it off and powder coat it later if I wanted. So I'm going to build this guy this weekend. Probably build it for $15 or so. Or less. Out of some thin square tubing, steel, thin wall. Really, really light, really, really strong, and that will support the back and give me a little bit more stress relief back there so nothing cracks in the back. And then they also have a strain relief on the floor, or for the like a sway bar almost, but I don't have any plans for that yet. So that's basically it for the stress bar. So you can see here on Eurosport, this guy plus another probably $20 for shipping, another $10, let's say, for shipping. So that's a $100 bar there. I'll probably build it for $15. I'll show you guys how to build it if it all goes to plan and everything fits smoothly. But it looks like a pretty easy build. So next is another thing I plan on doing this weekend is I plan on, my printer is finally back up. My Tronxy X5 SA, which is a 12 by 12 by 15 inch build plate, and I plan on building a cold air intake for the Rabbit. So basically, these Rabbits, they have these apron, these apron. What's the word for it? The apron grills. There's little grills that go here, and then this is where the bumper bolts in. And I have the small Euro bumper, so these are kind of hidden behind the bumper. And this one goes right up to the radiator, but this one doesn't go anywhere. In stock, these two are actually sealed. This one here is actually, it has a grill to make it symmetrical, but the grill actually doesn't have any openings in it. So it's actually a solid grill over here. I've since taken it out for more airflow, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to slot that grill, so make the grill actually functional. And so you'll see a grill here, but this one's open. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to print a funnel that attaches via magnets, and it has a little seal for made out of cork that kind of mates onto here, and then have a snorkel go up, a plastic snorkel go up and attach to my current snorkel. Or maybe even remake that whole thing where it's... I would like it to keep it looking stock, but we'll see. I might just replace that whole thing where it attaches to the front and clips in. I might print that piece as well and just have a tube, flexible plastic tube or rubber tube, go right up to that and clamp on. So that's another thing I'm going to look at trying to do this weekend. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do both the bar and this one. I'll probably have to pick one. And also that's going to be a pretty long print because of the size, so I might only be able to print one piece and then kind of give you guys a part, a couple part series or something. So I might do part one this weekend, and that whole bar I'll probably finish this weekend. So I'm going to make that there, so there's going to be a cold air intake that goes right here on the other side. And the grill's going to be here, so it's going to look all stock until you look in the engine bay and you'll see a little piece there. Another thing is, you guys know that I have the Chemi, I guess you could pronounce it. I have the Chemi scoop at home, and because I have a failed motor, failed blower motor on my box, my heater box for to suck air inside the car, and some of these heat waves. A couple days ago, I was driving to a interview. It was 100 degrees outside, and it was crazy hot inside. And so I'd really like to get some better airflow. So I bought an anemometer, which is basically something that you could use to measure wind speed. And so I measured wind speed before with no scoop going down the freeway at a certain speed. And I measured the wind speed, and I'm going to install this guy for next week or maybe this weekend to just do a quick freeway drive and then measure it and then record those measurements and use that. So we'll have, if the Chemi scoop, which I bought $150 for a used one, for an original one, so we'll see if that's worth it or just do a new blower. So we'll see. We'll use data to determine that. Okay, another thing I've been thinking about buying for the turbo setup, I've been thinking about buying a console for it, so I could put some sort of 2 gauges for right now. One is going to be for exhaust temp and boost, and the other one's going to be for AFR, air fuel ratio. So I could see, okay, at this boost with a stock pump, when I get on it, this is how much my air fuel ratio drops, and okay, I'm at a point where it's going to start to smoke, pretty much. So I don't have to look out of my mirror to see if it's smoking. I could just kind of get on it and see at what point it sags and if I need to push the boost up. And because I have an EGT uh, exhaust temp gauge, I'll know if I could push it any further or if I'm getting to the point where the pistons might be getting a little too hot. So this is something I'm looking at here. I found a guy close by that I'm seeing, and I've actually bought a couple of things from him on eBay, and I realized that I actually live pretty close to him. So I'm trying to figure out if that's something that I could come by and maybe save some money on shipping if I just come by. Okay, so another thing is you guys saw that I have a wood grain dash, and then I have for a right-hand drive, and then I have a left-hand drive Sirocco dash. Now the left-hand drive has a mile per hour speedometer in it with 6 digits instead of 5, and it has a trip meter, and it's in miles per hour, and it goes up to 120. And it also has a tachometer in it with the temperature and the fuel gauge. And now that's a silver cluster, and that's for a right-hand drive. So I bought a left-hand drive with the dual gauges, but one of them's a clock, and one of them only goes up to 80 miles an hour. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap the two clusters, and it turns out that actually the speedometer is still on the right side on a right-hand drive car. It doesn't flip sides. So it's still in the right orientation. So I'm just going to flip the two clusters, flip what gauges are in there, and then I'm going to run those gauges as my new gauges. And then because I'm running the tobacco interior with the kind of dark brown on the doors, I'm going to buy the little stickers, or have some stickers made with this wood grain that goes across my dash like a normal deluxe interior would have. So I'm pretty excited about this to kind of add a little bit more style to the interior and give it more of a racy high performance look. So I'll also have this for the turbo, and I'll have the cluster, and I'll have the console for the turbo as well, so I can monitor the turbo. And in the future, what I would like to do is I would like to do something else with those gauges, and with those two gauges in the console. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to design a thing that basically shows like your boost heat. Like I don't have this in mind. This is not here. I just have this in mind. So I was thinking about having something where when it's off, it looks completely stock, but when you turn it on, it actually gives you some numbers up here behind these guys. So for example, when you turn it on, right here, it'll tell you your voltage. These will work normally, but here it'll tell you your voltage. Over here, it'll tell you oil pressure, oil temp, water temp, engine temp, exhaust temp, boost, etc. All that stuff. And that'll be behind these guys. So when you turn it off, it looks completely stock. But when you turn it on, you don't have to look down at the console in order to see how your car is doing. You just look at your gauge cluster, and you'll have some digital readouts of what the current status of your car is. And I think that is definitely an increase in safety and precision, and also I don't have to have like 50 gauges all over the place. So that's what I have planned. That's not till later. I'll probably run the console, the new console, because it's just I'm kind of adding a lot of GTI parts, a lot of performance parts, but obviously it's a diesel. So and also I need those gauges for the turbo. Another thing I have planned as well is I did the front Kelsey Hayes swap, and I've done 2 of the 3 videos for that 3-part series. I'm still evaluating that brake swap and see if there's anything else that I would recommend, and that's going to be in my conclusion video at the end of the series. So that might be another month or so from now. So I've been thinking, hey, what am I going to do with my front brake calipers that I took off? I took off my ATE calipers off the front with a small pad. And I've been looking at the back, and I said, wow, these are really small drums. I could change them to the Caddy drums, which are the 200 millimeter drums. But I'm going to pay another $150 to increase them another 3/4 inch in diameter. It's not worth it. So what I decided to do is I'm actually going to move and actually install the ATE calipers, my used calipers, in the back. And so I'm going to try to figure out if I could design a conversion kit, my own conversion kit, where you don't have to do some of these things. So basically what you see here on the discs is that it has a custom disc, I believe it's custom, where they have, it's all made as one piece, and then this is where all the bearings are in. The bearings are in here, just like in the drums. Now the issue with that is every time that you need to replace the rotors, if you're running like semi-metallic pads, these are going to cost way more, and they're going to be harder to find than just doing than just buying a different for a brand new rotor. So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an interior core for this thing that the rotor just goes on top of. The original rotor just goes on top of. So when you want to buy a new rotor, you just take that conversion kit out and put a new rotor on it. So you just keep the same internal conversion kit and you just put a new rotor on. Because new rotors for this car are like $10 a piece, right? While these might be $30, $40 a piece. And you can see kind of from the cost. So that's my plan, and adding, basically welding on two of these guys to this current spindle setup so that I could attach the ATE, and then what I'm going to do for the parking brake, because these are calipers modded to run parking brake. I might even try to see if I could even buy these calipers, but we'll see. I'm thinking about coming up with my own parking brake kit for it, or parking brake setup for it. So yeah, so that's probably later on, but I will be looking into that as well. And finally, of course, this all is towards the turbo kit. So this is the Hans Auto Parts turbo kit, a 1.6 liter NA turbo conversion. It's $450. So I've been thinking about this a lot, and I'm thinking that I'm going to do quite a bit of modifications to this when I run it. So pretty much the only thing I'm thinking that I'm probably going to keep is probably the turbo and the intake. And the downpipe's okay. So what I'm thinking of doing is I'm thinking of taking this exhaust and basically building a header. So looking at how this is spaced and where it needs to end up, and then kind of doing a CAD model from that, and then do the bending for the tubing, or have somebody CNC bend it or something, and then create my own headers, because I want to try to squeeze as much power out of this engine without adding more fuel. Because the more fuel you add, eventually this engine can't take it anymore, and it's gonna break down on you. So I want to keep the temperature lower to start out with, keep the temperature range lower to start out with, and have as many performance parts on there as possible, some of which will probably have to be custom. So that's kind of my thoughts right now, and the current things that are going to happen with the Mustang and the Rabbit in the near future. So I basically gave you almost, for the Rabbit, probably another 6 months of material right there, and for the Mustang another 3.5 months of material there. So that's kind of what's going to be happening. And anything else that I come up with, I will include that in the footage coming up. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys for this material here. Thanks for watching. Take it easy. Peace.